Pride comes before the fall. If you're a Batman fan, I believe it's in the Batman trilogy from back like 2007, 2011, that age. But pride comes before the fall. I think we know what that means. That's not like a shell shocker for anybody. Pride comes before the fall. That's our way of saying, okay, if you're prideful, you're going to be prideful, and it's going to lead to your downfall. It's going to cause your life to crumble. You will fall if you become overly stuck on yourself. If we become overly stuck on ourselves, when life becomes centered around the individual, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's people across the street, whatever the case may be, it is easy for it to ravel out of control and to do that quickly. Tonight, I want to share with you a story about P.T. Barnum. Y'all ever heard that name before? P.T. Barnum. Well, if you don't know much about him, you will recognize him from the movie The Greatest Showman. It is a phenomenal movie. I am not necessarily into musicals, but this one is worth it. It is good. It's from a couple years ago, 2016, maybe 2017. But it is a story of the life of P.T. Barnum. It's not every bit of it is true, but a lot of it is true. And it's the story of this man who came from a humble beginning, who didn't have a whole lot. But he sees this girl, and he's in love with this girl, and this girl has everything. This girl is on the upper class, he is on the lower class, and the father did not want them to be together. Long story short, they end up together, right? So it is like a fairy tale kind of wedding. It is a holy matrimony, something that everybody's excited about within the family, just not the dad, because the dad wants money. Okay, so P.T. Barnum starts out, he's in love with this girl. They go off, they start living their own life, but the problem is they don't have a lot of money. And P.T. Barnum wants to be successful. And so with this smart intuition, he creates the modern day circus. And it starts to take off. The upper class wouldn't go to the circus, but all the normal people would go, they would laugh, they would have fun, they'd watch elephants, they would watch clowns, they would watch trapeze artists, and they were having a good time. But that wasn't enough for P.T. Barnum. He wanted more. He wanted to be able to fit into that upper class. He wanted to prove to his wife's dad that he was something special. And so he finds this amazing opera singer and convinces her to go on tour with him. And so they do. They go on tour all over the world, all over the countryside, and people are impressed because finally P.T. Barnum found something that everybody could enjoy, but even more specifically, the upper class. It's like he finally fit in with the people he strived his entire life to fit in with. But unfortunately, that came with a great cost. That almost cost him his marriage. That almost cost him his circus. So much so that his entire circus, the thing he worked so hard to build, actually burned down to the ground. So when you chase fame, when you chase glory that much, you miss out on some of the most important things of life, which is family, it's friends. And he almost missed out on all those. But luckily, the story has a good ending. He separates from the singer, and he goes back home where he finds what life is truly all about, being happy and being where your friends are. So it's a powerful story. I do encourage you to go home and to watch it. Something that I think we can realize from the story tonight is the search for fame, the search for applause, the search for acceptance, the search for glory can cost a lot. And it can cause us to do things and say things that we never would have in our everyday life. Chasing after fame, chasing after other people's acceptance is a dangerous path. Because honestly, we only need one person's acceptance in this life, and you know what I'm going to say. We only need one person's acceptance in this life, and that is the approval of God. It doesn't matter what your friends at school say. It doesn't matter what your teachers say. It doesn't matter what your coaches say. At the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is what the Father in heaven says about you. In tonight's story, found in Acts chapter 5, we see the wrong end of that. We see two individuals who were trying to go to the church and let the whole church applaud them for what they had done. And unfortunately, pride comes before the fall. Unfortunately, because of that grave mistake of searching for outward approval instead of God's approval, it's a serious offense to the church and to God himself. So let's look at that. Acts chapter 5, 1 through 11. Now a man named Ananias, y'all say Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? After it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God. When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. Ghost stories in the place tonight. When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. Yikes. And great fear seized all who heard what had happened. Then some young men came forward, wrapped up his body, and carried him out and buried him. About 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter asked her, "Tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land?" "Yes," she said, "that is the price." Peter said to her, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Then the young men came in and, finding her dead, carried her out to be buried beside her husband. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard these events. What in the wide world of sports is going on out here? What's going on in this story? Are you kidding me? Did we read that right? Let's check it out one more time, just to make sure we got the gist of what's going on. Let me go back to verse 3. Then Peter said, "Ananias, how is it that Satan has filled your heart, that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and kept for yourself some of the money you received from the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't that money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God." When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died. And then the same happened to his wife. Peter said to her, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Whoa. In order to understand this passage, I think we need to understand what was happening. What's the problem? That they didn't give everything to the church. Well, kind of, but not really. Because it was their money. The church wasn't demanding all their money. That's not the case at all. So if you thought by me reading that passage that just because they didn't give everything, they died, well, that's not the full story. You see, when Ananias and Sapphira sold this property, it became their money. They could do whatever they wanted to with it. They didn't have to give it to the church, but they chose to. Or at least some of it. And they went to the church and said, "Hey, here is the full price of the land that we sold." The full price, all of it. Every single penny, every single ounce, all the gold, all the silver, whatever change, whatever currency they had, all of it. Here you go. The church, you can have it. Look at us. Y'all give us applause. You'll stand up and cheer for us because we did a great work. Check us out. We gave all the money that we had for selling this property. And Peter says, "Is that really the truth? Is this all the money that you sold the property for?" And it wasn't. They didn't have to give everything, but they said they did to gain the approval of men. They could have gave 10%, said, we're just giving 10%, here you go, church, and that be that. They could have gave the money to the church silently without anyone knowing, walked away, they would have been fine. But the fact is, they gave the money to the church, claimed one thing when actually it was the complete opposite. They tried to deceive the people inside of the church to receive personal glory right here, right now, instead of the acceptance that God would give. They did this for appearance, for the love of money, for deception. In order to gain glory and recognition, the couple lied to the church about their giving. They claimed that they gave everything, but it turns out that was not the truth. And that is a dangerous place to be. Why? Because God is calling us to love Him first and foremost, but God is also calling us to be an example to the believers, but also to the non-believers outside the walls of the church. What they did, they tried to get people to think that they were more spiritual than they were. It was great that they gave a gift to the church. What wasn't great is the fact that they lied about it. The fact that they deceived the church. And I think that's what makes the position of ministry a dangerous position to be in. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and I've seen some stuff. I'm not going to get into any details of what has happened in the past, but although you work in a church, it doesn't mean you work in a perfect environment. I'll just say that. People that work in the church sometimes can be just as corrupt as those living outside the church. You need to be aware of that. You need to know who the true pastors and preachers are, and you also need to know who the false prophets are. You need to know the word in order to discern between the two. These people, they were trying to deceive. And obviously that's a problem. Their heart was a problem. They lied about what they had done to the Holy Spirit in the church, and God considered that a serious offense. When you lie to the people of God, when you lie to the church, when you lie to the Holy Spirit, that is serious. And we have to be careful about that. Ananias and Sapphira, they wanted other people to think that they were spiritual giants, spiritual warriors. But instead, they were full of deception. Instead, they were full of money. Instead, they were full of chasing glory instead of chasing the acceptance of God the Father. One of the most abominable sins in the church is to deceive God's people, whether that be because of one's relationship with God, for their work for God, or for the extent of ministry. As the church witnesses, they were seized with fear. Can you imagine sitting there with Ananias and Sapphira? You see them bring in the bid offering, lay it at his feet, and claim that it was everything that they sold the piece of property for. And then you witness Ananias die right in front of your eyes. And then his wife comes in. And she is telling you the same lie that you had just heard. And then she dies right in front of you. The whole church was gripped with fear. And rightfully so. Because God is not someone to just toy around with. He's not just someone to make you look like you have it all together. He's not just a keychain you can put on your car keys. He's not just a tag along. God is the Lord of our life. God is everything. God is the one that we need to strive to be like. God is the one that we need to have a relationship with. God is the one that we need the acceptance of. He's got to be number one. He's got to be number one, because if he's not, everything else is just idolatry. And we know that the Ten Commandments speaks against idolatry. It's not about receiving glory. It's not about saying, hey, brothers and sisters, look how good I am. It's not about saying, hey, church, I gave this much money for missions. Look at me. No, the only thing that matters is acceptance of God. When the church saw this, they were gripped with fear because they realized something. We cannot be in this for the approval of man. We only need to be in this for the approval of God. When you see and witness something like that, you realize that your God is all-powerful. He knows everything, and you can't lie to His Spirit. You can't say something you're not. It's a dangerous, dangerous position. And that brings me to the idea of social media. Social media is a cool thing, and it can be a dangerous thing. It's cool because in church ministry, we consider it as ministry, a form of ministry, not a social media billboard, although you can use it for that. Not just a place to gain all the likes and all the attention of all your friends. No, I mean, that can happen, but that's not the goal. The goal is to share with you, to share with your friends, to share it with everybody all across this cultural platform who Jesus is. And so by doing that, we post pictures of you, we post sermon clips, we post all of this. And it's easy, if we're not careful, to say, check out this sermon. Look at how great a speaker we are. You know? That's not why we do it. But when you get likes, when you get applause, when you get the approval, man, it makes you feel good. But it's not about that. It's about honoring God. It's about spreading that gospel. By posting these, this is what we hope to accomplish. We hope that someone who doesn't know God potentially stumbles upon one and says, maybe I need to look more into this. We hope that maybe one of these sermon clips will inspire you just at the right point in your life. We hope that because of this, it'll cause people to go to our website, to check us out, so that they can actually come to a life-changing experience with God. We don't post it to glorify ourselves, to say, look at us, look at how cool we are. No, we post to share ministry, to make it about Him, not about us. Which brings me to my point tonight. God, deal with our humility before it's too late. Let God deal with our humility before it's too late. Unlike Ananias and Sapphira, we have a chance. We have a chance to say, God, fix what's broken inside of my heart. Help my life to be about you, not about me. God, help me to make you famous instead of just trying to make myself famous. It's not about how great of a singer I am, or how great of a speaker I am, or how great of a drummer I am, or how great of a spelling bee artist I am, or how great of an athlete I am. It's not about us. It's always about Him. As God gives us gifts, because He does, you're talented on purpose because God gave you that gift. What He wants you to do with it is to use it to glorify Him. As He gives me gifts, He wants me to use those to glorify Him. It's not about me making myself known. It's about me making Christ known. We should not seek the praise of mankind. It is okay if someone says, hey, good job, good sermon. Or, hey, good job, good worship song. Or, hey, good job, way to spike that ball into the other side of the floor and get a point for your team. It's okay for applause, but we should not seek the applause. We should use our gifts to glorify Him. We should make ourselves a living sacrifice. Everything we do should do in worship to our God. And when someone says, good job, say, thanks. God gave me the gift. I'm just trying to glorify Him. Or at the very least, just say thanks and move on. Don't make it about you. Try to make it about Him. If God is asking us to give, we should. If God is asking us to preach, we should. If God is asking us to share, we should. But we should do it not in our own strength. We should rely on Him. Let's face it. If it wasn't for God, I couldn't say a single sentence without stuttering. And I'm serious with that. Like sometimes in staff meeting, I wonder, is what I actually said, did that even make sense? Because I feel like I stopped 5 times, like I said the same word 5 times, like I can't complete an entire sentence. But when we preach a sermon, it's completely different. Why is that? Because it's about God. It's not about me. We need to let God deal with our humility. We need to let God deal with our heart. May we not do the same thing that Ananias and Sapphira did. We don't live for earthly glory. We should seek our heavenly reward. We do not follow Christ so that people can marvel at our good works. We follow Christ because we realize We need Christ desperately. So in conclusion today, I pray that we all could use more humility. That we all could say, God, I pray that you help me. Because sometimes I care more about what my friends say about me than what you say about me. I pray that we say, God, help us. You've given us some ability, some talent, some strong attributes in life. Help me to use those to glorify you instead of getting 1,000 likes on my Instagram post. Maybe you don't use social media. Maybe instead say, God, if I make a good grade on a test, that's great. But I do it because I want to be the best I can be for you, not necessarily to receive all the attention from my classmates who want the same grades that I do, and so therefore copy off of my tests. No, let us do everything we can to honor God. As God gives us gifts, we should use those gifts. But our motivation should not be to simply receive praise now. Our motivation should be to receive, well done, good and faithful servant. Ananias and Sapphira, they messed up. They cared too much about what the church thought about them, so they lied about their gift. And it caused their death. It caused their downfall. It's a scary situation. It's very serious. As we transition to modern day life, I pray that we seek God's approval over the approval of those sitting next to you, over the approval of your friends in your classroom. It's God that matters. We're nothing without him. Let me pray for you. God, we love you so much, and we're thankful for you. God, I know time is short and we got to get out of here, but I pray that you allow this message to sink into our heart. God, be with us. Give us your strength. A message like this requires an altar call. So this is the time we have. So give us your strength. God, help us to follow after you.